Legal safeguards. Laws and strategies are in place to protect the nurse against litigation. Good Samaritan Acts are an example of laws designed to help protect nurses when assisting at the scene of an emergency. Providing safe, competent practice by following the Nurse Practice Act and standards of practice is a major legal safeguard for nurses. Accurate and complete documentation is also a critical component of legal protection for the nurse. Risk management for legal safeguards. Risk management is a planned method to identify, analyze, and evaluate risks, followed by a plan for reducing the frequency of accidents and injuries. Programs are based on a systematic reporting system for incidents or unusual occurrences. Incident reports. An incident report, also called an unusual occurrence report, is an agency record of an accident or unusual occurrence. Incident reports are used to make all facts available to agency personnel, to contribute to statistical data about accidents or incidents, and to help health personnel prevent future incidents or accidents. All accidents are usually reported on incident forms. Some agencies also report other incidents, such as the occurrence of client infection or the loss of personal effects. The incident report is used as a means of identifying risk situations and improving client care. Follow specific documentation guidelines. Fill out the report completely, accurately, and factually. The report form should not be copied or placed in the client's record. Make no reference to the incident report form in the client's record. The report is not a substitute for a complete entry in the client's record regarding the incident. If a client injury or error in care occurred, assess the client frequently. Incidents that need to be reported. Accidental omission of prescribed therapies. Circumstances that led to injury or a risk for client injury. Client falls. Medication administration errors. Needle stick injuries. Procedure-related or equipment-related accidents. A visitor injury that occurred in the healthcare agency premises. A visitor who exhibits symptoms of a communicable disease. Safeguarding valuables. Clients' valuables should be given to a family member or secured for safekeeping in a stored and locked designated location, such as the agency's safe. The location of the client's valuables should be documented per agency policy. Many healthcare agencies require a client to sign a release to free the agency of the responsibility for lost valuables. A client's wedding band can be taped in place unless a risk exists for swelling of the hands or fingers. Religious items, such as medals or scapulars, may be pinned to the client's gown if allowed by agency policy. Physician's prescriptions. Nurses are expected to analyze procedures and medications ordered by the physician or primary care provider. It is the nurse's responsibility to seek clarification of ambiguous or seemingly erroneous orders from the prescriber. Clarification from any other source is unacceptable and regarded as a departure from competent nursing practice. If the order is neither ambiguous nor apparently erroneous, the nurse is responsible for carrying it out. For example, if the order is for oxygen to be administered at 4 liters per minute, the nurse must administer oxygen at that rate, and not at 2 or 6 liters per minute. If the orders state that the client is not to have solid food after a bowel resection, the nurse must ensure that no solid food is given to the client. A nurse is obligated to carry out a physician's prescription order, except when the nurse believes a prescription to be inappropriate or inaccurate. A nurse carrying out an inaccurate prescription may be legally responsible for any harm suffered by the client. The nurse should clarify with the physician an unclear or inappropriate prescription. If no resolution occurs regarding the prescription in question, the nurse should contact the nurse manager or supervisor. The nurse should follow specific guidelines for telephone prescriptions. Telephone prescriptions, orders. Date and time the entry. Repeat the order to the physician, and record the order. Sign the order, begin with T.O, telephone order, write the physician's name, and sign the order. If another nurse witnessed the order, that nurse's signature follows. The physician needs to countersign the order within a time frame according to agency policy. The nurse should ensure that all components of a medication prescription are documented. Components of a medication prescription: order. Date and time order was written. Medication name. Medication dosage. Route of administration. Frequency of administration. Physician's or healthcare provider's signature. Documentation. The client's medical chart is a legal document and can be produced in court as evidence. Often, the chart is used to remind a witness of events surrounding a lawsuit, because several months or years usually elapse before a suit goes to trial. The effectiveness of a witness's testimony can depend on the accuracy of the nurse's documentation of nursing care. Nurses, therefore, need to provide accurate and complete documentation of the nursing care provided to clients. Failure to properly document can constitute negligence and be the basis for tort liability. Insufficient or inaccurate assessments and documentation can hinder proper diagnosis and treatment and result in injury. Documentation is legally required by accrediting agencies, state licensing laws, and state nurse and medical practice acts. The nurse should follow agency guidelines and procedures to the client. Documentation guidelines, narrative and information technology. Use a black-colored ink pen for narrative documentation. Date and time entries. Provide objective, factual, and complete documentation. Document care, medications, treatments, and procedures as soon as possible after completion. Document client responses to interventions. Document consent for or refusal of treatments. Document calls made to other healthcare providers. Do not document for others or change documentation for other individuals. Sign and title each entry. Use quotes as appropriate for subjective data. Use correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation. Avoid unacceptable abbreviations. Avoid judgmental or evaluative statements, such as uncooperative client. Do not leave blank spaces on documentation forms. Follow agency policies when an error is made. Draw one line through the error, initial, and date. Follow agency guidelines regarding late entries. Use only the user identification code, name, or password for computerized documentation. Never lend access identification computer codes to another person. Change password at regular intervals. Maintain privacy and confidentiality of documented information printed from the computer. Client and family teaching. Provide complete instructions in a language that the client or family can understand. Document client and family teaching, what was taught, evaluation of understanding, and who was present during the teaching. Inform the client of what could happen if information shared during teaching is not followed. Reminder. The nurse should never carry out a prescription order if it is unclear or inappropriate. The physician should be contacted immediately.